Hello students, how are you doing? Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Ramesh Chandra Devrat from Indian Institute of Tourism and Travel Management, Gwalior. Today, we are going to study the module How to Develop Good Interpretation Skills under the paper Tour Guiding Essentials. We bring this course to you as a part of e-Pathshala initiative of the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, to make postgraduate education accessible to all. Discussions during the previous modules has led to a solid foundation in terms of our understanding the principles of interpretation. In this module, we take up another important discussion on how to develop good interpretation skills. We will straight away begin with needs of developing good interpretation skills. In this module, we will also discuss about the various interpretation skills and their purposes, why interpretation skills are important and the overall process of interpretation. As an important discussion, we will also talk about the aid in better representing among your audience. This will be the last part of our discussion in this module. Human communication is a multifaceted learned skills which involves verbal and non-verbal messages. For a complete process of communication, the good understanding and interpretation skills are inevitable. The messages, either verbal or non-verbals, requires interpretation skills for comprehending the messages in the similar intellect. The inability of a person in understanding and interpretation of messages can be lead to a serious consequences. That is why interpretation skills are regarded as the critical aspects which directly affects the overall process of communication. Now let's talk about interpretation skills. Interpretation skills are the set of two separate words, that is interpretation and skills. Interpretation means to translate orally or to translate what is said in a foreign language. It includes clarifying what something or someone means, grouping or categorizing information and determining the significance of a message, whereas the word skills means the ability to do something well or with expertise. Together, these two words mean the person who has the ability or expertise to decipher what is said in a foreign language orally in a particular way to bring out the meaning out of it. In the words of American National Association for Interpretation, it is a mission-based communication process that forges emotional and intellectual connections between the interest of the audience and the meanings inherent in the resource. However, the word interpretation may have varied meaning in different contextual backgrounds based on the experiences, training and interpersonal ability of people. Yet, in the context of tour guiding, it is not limited to presenting information only. Information is mere fact and figures presented before the visitors, whereas interpretation adds meaning to those facts and figures. It involves a specific strategy of communication to translate that particular information from technical language to easy everyday language of visitor and enabling the people to comprehend the information in an effective manner. Interpretation is a communication process designed to reveal meanings and relationship of our cultural and natural heritage through involvement with objects, artifacts, landscapes and sites. Interpretation is a meaning-making communication process that makes use of specific culture and national symbols or situations for the interpretation. The interpreter and the tourist, by involvement and engagement with the tangible elements of a culture like artifacts, landscape, monuments, sculptures, etc., try to understand the culture. These tangible elements are interpreted in a way to help the visitor relate to the actual values and concepts communicated by the elements of the culture. Students, as explained by Robotic in 2010, it essentially meant at explaining the importance of a several cultural and heritage significance of a destination in order to create positive impression, admiration and better comprehension of a particular destination in the minds of the visitor. It also acts as a facilitator to change in the behavior and attitude of visitor, which leads towards the establishment of emotional and intellect association between a particular destination and visitor. Encyclopedia of Tourism has defined it as any action which pursues to clarify people the meaning of a culture or a place. It briefly describes and communicates the ideas of places, people and its worth. Interpreters or guides help audiences make connections with history, culture, science and the special places on the planet, claiming that they handle a very sacred trust, the stories of where humankind has been, who we are and what we have learned. It is a progression which specifically aimed at provoking the cognizant minds of the audience and urge them to critically think about the topic in particular which is being explained to them. When the audiences start brainstorming for a specific topic, then it further results in developing a new subjective understanding and narrative for that topic in particular. In the nutshell, interpretation is putting information in a way what resonates with your audience. An influential interpretation is the one which intensifies the visitor's curiosity by establishing the importance of the site with cheering enthusiasm among them. In such setting, it has become extremely imperative for the guides to develop good interpretation skills which would empower them to convey the intended message in a coherent manner. Students, let's discuss some ways which would aid in developing good interpretation skills among the guides. Our first point is proper knowledge. It is regarded as the prime and key essential aspect for every tour guide. Having proper knowledge about the site, objects and related areas enable a guide to relate it with different historical and cultural significances. As an interpreter, a guide is required to relate the significance of a particular site with the different emotional, spiritual, historically and cultural dimensions of visitors. In order to develop a proper knowledge base, you should apply for admissions in some certified schools for tour guiding. A certificate not only improves your employability chances but would also aid in developing your knowledge base. Second is understand your audiences. A communication process is half finished until the receiver is not being able to comprehend your message. Therefore, in order to remove such drawbacks, a tour guide must analyze and understand his or her audience. A tour guide should be capable of assessing the personal attributes of his or her audience and then choose a right way to make communications with the audience. A guide needs to be positioning the group, assessing group's abilities, pointing out precisely, storytelling, etc. Understanding the attributes associated with the audience help you to make conscious decisions regarding the mode, methods and means to start two-way communication with the visitors. The third one is be relevant. Once you have identified the attributes associated with your audience, that is their likes and dislikes, interest, hobbies, nature and perception, then try to connect to all those attributes as quickly as possible. Look, what is the most important things the visitors are looking for and connect to that. By doing so, you are making your interpretations personal and meaningful, which would give visitors a sense of belongingness towards the site itself. You can also adopt the method of self-referencing, which basically focuses on making the interpretation personal by drawing a parallel from the lifestyles of visitors. This helps in capturing the imagination of visitors who connect the new information provided by you and their individual sleeves. Fourth way of developing good interpretation skills is be meaningful. You should always keep one thing in mind while using any language or mode, that it should be meaningful. The language used by you must be able to communicate the proposed message well to your audiences. If you critically analyze how any of us approach towards a new information, you will find that we usually relate it to the past experience or have a context for it. You can make your information by using examples, analogies, contrasts, images, or metaphors in order to enable your audience to correlate it. A classic example of a thing which is not meaningful is something which is causing confusion, maybe using many technical terms, jargons, or abbreviations. You must always try to avoid the use of technical language or use of excessive jargons, because if the visitors are not being able to comprehend, it will kill their interest. However, instead of using technical jargons, one can employ the uses of relevant examples in between in order to make their comprehension simple. Always try to relate the new information to something that the visitors are already familiar with by drawing different analogies and mixing up them with one another depending upon the situation. Fifth one is be methodological. It is necessary for a tour guide that the information presented by him or her must be organized and arranged systematically. A methodical interpretation generally leads towards better retention among the visitors. According to notions of tour guiding, the key concept associated with the site, object, or event interpretation should not be more than 5. Otherwise, the chances are higher that the visitors not got confused with them and whole interpretation gradually fade away. You must always try to explain such associated concepts in the form of structured and logical way. You can also club such concepts into an eloquent story which would be easier to remember from the perspective of your visitors. Sixth one is it's be fun. The ultimate crux of every visitor is to have enjoyment and a memorable time during his or her tour. It could only be possible by adding fun element in the journey. As a tour guide, it must be your prime responsibility to add fun-filled experience for your visitor. Try to be cool and use humor. It will make you and your audiences familiar with each other, which would lead to the more relaxed, informal association between you and your audience. Being chuckle some also reduces the stress of your visitors. Apart from adding funny elements to your interpretation, also try to correlate one thing with another. However, it must be logical enough. By correlating multi-proportions of a particular place with its antique, traditional, and moral connotations, you could take your visitors into the leap of imagination and amusement. For this, you can also use active language while interpretation. This will not only grab the attention of your visitors towards you, but also aid in connecting their consciousness with splendidness of sight itself. Seventh way of developing interpretation skill is language proficiency. Nelson Mandela once said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. And if you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. As a tour guide, you must have the proficiency in multi-language dialogues. A multilingual guide will be able to communicate to his or her visitor in unsurpassed means. Language is considered as the most critical and important aspect of the overall processes of interpretation. As long as you do not possess such qualities of a bilingual person, you might not be able to excel in the other parameters of effective interpretation. Having knowledge about a particular site, object, or event is a secondary thing if you are not being able to deliver that knowledge to your audience in the manner or mood they want. Mason in 2005 also stressed the importance of the skills of conveyance over actual knowledge in guiding, and he claims all the guides are interpreters first and subject specialists second. Therefore, in existing circumstances, it has become unavoidable for tour guides to have a multilingual character. Language proficiency is considered as the core characteristics in a tour guiding because it enables a guide to undertake other related activities which would result in better comprehension and retention among his or her audiences. Theorists believe that having proper knowledge is of no use if a tour guide is not being able to deliver the information in a logical manner. In such context, language proficiency is considered as prime requisite which precedes other aspect of interpretation like having proper knowledge, relevancy, meaningfulness, and humor. Therefore, you should always try to develop a multilingual personality which would help in better interpretation. Students, let's have a look on the 6 key characteristics of a good interpreter. The first characteristic is they are excellent listeners. The second characteristic is they have remarkable sensory and cognitive abilities. Third one is they have rich vocabulary in multiple languages. The fourth characteristic is they are culturally alert and aware. The fifth one is they are able to cope with stress and they exert a great deal of self-control when working with difficult speakers. And the sixth one is they are emotionally flexible. Apart from this, there are several theories, concepts, model and methods relating to various authors, writers, experts and psychologists in the field of tour guiding interpretation. However, the TOR model is considered as one of the most prime and influential work. TORE is an acronym which means theme, organized, relevant and enjoyable. Let's have a look on the TOR model. Based on the acronym, this model was developed by Dr. Sam Ham for outlining and removing the different barriers in the cycle of effective interpretation. According to Dr. Ham, all these 4 qualities have been developed from the result of prolonged research work in the field of human communication. Due to such prolonged research exercise, researchers are now being able to recognize, advance and envisage how human beings respond to different channels, modes and mediums of communications, and when this process is completed well. The author has suggested 4 main aspects which would help a tour guide for better interpretation. The first aspect is the interpretation should have a theme. A theme makes the guide job easier in presenting or sharing information on a specific topic because it gives you some guidelines like what you should include, what to exclude and on what in exact you need to emphasize. However, chances are there that you might perceive a theme as a topic. A topic is a kind of general subject matter, but a theme is really a specific idea or mean point that you want to communicate to your group. The theme allows you to answer that question of all the things that you know what you are going to share with your audiences today. According to the guidelines of tour guiding, you should always try to frame a simple theme so that your audience could understand it effortlessly. A theme should be like such that you can able to say it in a single sentence. The second aspect is interpretation should be organized. Interpretation should be organized and must present in a way that is easy to follow. In other words, interpretation is best when your audiences does not need to do a singleton of work, though this can sometimes happens when your material is dense, complicated or hard to follow. According to Dr. Hen, most of the people can only handle about 4 diverse pieces of information at a time, which means that you want to know certain 4 focal ideas with your theme. You can also formulate those focal ideas as your subpoints around the main theme so that you would be able to talk around each of these sub-themes. You can also list in some unconnected facts for delivering your audiences to their consciousness. You should take your time to organize your delivering. Always remember, you must not add more than 4 supplementary ideas for a central theme. As far as the third aspect is concerned, your information should be relevant. A presentation or interpretation of monument on tour is relevant to the audience for having 2 characteristics. Either it is personal or it is meaningful. Meaningful is basically means that you have a connect the new idea that are sharing to those ideas that are already present in the minds of the audience. For a topic or presentation to be relevant, it got to be meaningful, which just means that you are going to relate it to something your audience knows, but you also have to relate it to something your audience care about, and that is where the personal side comes in. Studies have shown that there are universal concepts that all human beings right back through time and across cultures care about. Universal concepts are one which are an immeasurable part of human species. You should try to recognize some of these things like emotions, happiness, sadness, anger, jealousy, or it could be some of the biological functions like hunger, thirst, or even birth and death. And of course, our fascination with mystery, with the cosmos and ethics and morality. You should use such universal concepts to make your audience care about your theme, including deeper connection with your material. And the last aspect is interpretation should be enjoyable. Successful communication is enjoyable and it is mentally pleasing or satisfying in some way. Most audiences will enjoy being involved in some way and appreciate your humor. As a tour guide, you should try to engage their 5 senses, that is interaction, music, props and visual aids. Generally, you should try to be informal and use casual conversational terms. In last, just remember, as Louis Armstrong said, when you are smiling, the whole world smiles with you. So if you are relaxed and having fun, as a tour leader, your audience is going to be more relaxed and have more fun too. As explained in the above figure, to develop good interpretation skills, a guide must formulate an underlying theme, organize it with relevant information, and in the end, try to make your audience comfortable with you. Your audience should enjoy your company. Interpretation is a science and art both. On the one side, it requires some sort of specialized knowledge in history, geography, cultural heritage of certain regions, etc. Specific techniques and principles which meant to be followed in order to better conception. Though On the other side, it requires interpersonal abilities of a guide for a purposeful interpretation process. A guide can acquire certain skills by practice because knowledge is of no value unless you put it into practice. But he or she must possess several specific personal characteristics in order to be a decent linguistic. According to Pond observations, it is tremendously vital for guides to possess numerous explicit individual traits. Others are skills that would be learnt or established in training. In spite of that, the training module of tour guiding in many countries is mostly theoretical, based with much emphasis being given to the traditional school of knowledge, and it usually discarding the communication and presentation skills which are considered to be the art of guiding. It also ignored the multi-dimensional group dynamics management. Interpretation is an interpersonal societal skill which enables a guide to make people aware of their surroundings in an effective manner. It is a commitment of providing resolute eminence to visitors by quality experiences about the site. As a tour guide, you should always take efforts for developing a customer-centric and interpretive attitudes and always try to leave your visitors asking for more. Students, by now you must have realized how important it is to develop good interpretation skills. As a tour guide, you should have a multi-talented personality. You should possess a blend of soft skills and practical work. You should have proper knowledge, base and analytical abilities. Apart from these, you should try to develop humor in yourself because your visitors always try to have more things for enjoyments. Your interpretation should be thematic, organized, relevant and enjoyable. Think of this model as another tool in your toolbox for inspiring your visitors to care more deeply about the information you have shared with them. You must always remember about not to add more than 4 supplementary ideas for a central theme, otherwise this will lead to unnecessary boredom among your visitors. In the next session, we will talk about nature interpretation. Thanks and happy learning.